Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Unit 8 course project presentation. My name is Joshua Stout. The assignment itself is to record myself explaining the steps I've taken so far in the project, the rationale behind those steps, and any remaining steps to kind of complete the development. So to do that, I'm just going to walk through all the project homework assignments we received because that's basically what I've done. So in that very first assignment, provided a description of each business process. For me, those business processes was the bike rental itself, that transaction of renting the bike, the transaction of the system capturing all the data into like a user manager type of database, and then the billing. And then the billing takes place based on how long the rental was and what servers are fine. There are other sub-processes in there, such as registration, implementing security software updates, but those are the three core items. After that, I had to propose an IS architecture, and so what I did there is, I kind of provided the software that I would recommend immediately, not having an in-depth knowledge of all the software options, the database type, hardware components, and then I designed an architect structure. Due to my current job, I actually have a knowledge base in this stuff already. So I did provide an architect structure using the bike stations as one area of the architecture, and then I leveraged like the Amazon cloud to host multiple servers, redundant servers, for all the software that would track the rentals, user management, the billing, and just the data in general, along with a team of information system developers, security leads, developer leads, to do all the programming and updates. The third assignment was main security risks, identifying those risks and how to account for them. And so I did go through each of the systems, to my knowledge, and identified the risks that were most understandable at the surface. I mean, there's always a lot more deep down in the code that is beyond my skill level, but I would rely on experts to analyze those and provide solutions. The next bit was we had an assignment for design a flow chart for the billing schema, and so what this was, it was really just to create a code snippet for one small piece of the overall system, just to leverage how it would work. And basically, if you could write that code snippet, you can kind of write all the other code snippets to bring it all together and make one thing. Now, granted, developing software is not my skill level, so while it did function, it may not have been as efficient as it needed to be, and so I would rely on expert developers to do that. And what my billing schema did is it leveraged the renting time, when it was rented, when it was returned, calculated the billing, and then provided those charges. After that, we had design database structures, and that was kind of an assignment that paired well with the very next one, which was designing the tables. So basically, you had to learn to design the structures, the objects, the variables, the date times, whatever those were that you needed in your system for the entire system. And so I did graph those out and provided those values. I'm sure there's small things I missed, like modified time and little discrete things that you tend to find in the database. But I tried to keep it straightforward, as the intent was it to be consumed at a high level. And then we followed that assignment up, as I mentioned, with the table structures. So for me, that was real easy. I mean, I already had all the pieces. I just applied it to the tables. Since we were using a relational database format, I made sure they all had the proper IDs to relate them from table to table as necessary. I think in my case, I kept everything related back to the user ID or the bike ID. It was really based on the object. The bike itself was an object, so anything tied to the bike would have a bike ID somehow tying it back in there. Same for the users. And then the final assignment was creating a development implementation plan. I mean, ideally, the assignment was far too short in length. You can't create a 2-page development plan for something quite as large unless it's just really a high level, I want to read this for a moment while I'm on an airplane sort of thing. I imagine an actual plan would be 10 to 50 pages in length, based on how detailed you want to be. Some projects try to reduce documentation to a bare minimum. Agile is good for that, and it's not that you don't have documentation, it's just you don't have wasted documentation. You don't record things that don't need to be recorded. So that implementation plan, I basically have the basic startup, of acquiring the bikes, ensuring that you reach out to a legal entity to verify that everything you're about to do is legit within the state and or country that you were putting these bikes up in. That was one of our first assignments, was just being aware of the local laws and country laws, permits, etc. Making those purchases, getting the bike units, making sure insurance was there. I imagine if anyone hurts themselves on a bike, we got to have ourselves covered somehow. The people who rent the bikes, they got to be responsible for fixing them if anything goes wrong. Someone's got to retrieve bikes that aren't returned. Next was creating that architecture structure, in the Amazon cloud. And my idea was hire the team that would manage it first, because they're the ones that are going to set it up, and that would include the developers, project manager, network administrator, database administrator, and then the security team that we had later on assignment. But beyond that, to me, it was very straightforward. It was a good starting project, a good way to think about IS in general. Thank you, everybody. I hope you had a great assignment as well.